Hello, my name is Jonathan Forster and welcome to the Multi-Story Thinking podcast on interior design. I'm an interior designer and educator. My job is to improve quality of life and productivity by helping people to create beautiful and practical spaces to live and work in. The Multi-Story Thinking podcast takes an educational slant to the interior design world. If, like me, you are curious about how things are done within the industry, how people got their breaks and how they've developed their careers, and get some top tips and advice, then this is the podcast for you. So sit back, relax, as we help unravel the mysteries of interior design. Thushar Jayamanne and Lakshinie Rathnapala run Talk Design Studios, which is a Sri Lankan architectural and interior design consultancy based in Colombo. Together they lead a dynamic team of architects, interior designers, furniture designers, technicians and consultants working across the residential and commercial design sectors. I interviewed them during a visit to Sri Lanka in 2022 when I was teaching at the NSBM Green University as part of the Academic Partnerships Programme with the University of Plymouth. In this episode, we discover the importance of integrating interior design into a project from the project inception, how the interior design industry is establishing itself within Sri Lanka and the importance of focusing on the core interior elements of a building, how owning a furniture factory helps to deliver the detail of their design proposals, the impact of COVID-19 and the Sri Lankan economic crisis on the design process and how it inspired a more creative and sustainable approach, and why, if you're asked to name your favourite Sri Lankan interior designer, please don't say Jeffrey Bauer. Is there a big difference between the way that interior design is taught and architecture is taught in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so the way we practice is obviously we had visiting lecturers, but mainly that time we also had architects coming and teaching us interior design.
Yes.
Because I was in the first batch in Sri Lanka where it was the interior design degree, right? So that time we had some lack of resources in terms of teaching interior design. We didn't have reputed interior designers, so-called, that time, but very few, like Renika, Anika, and the rest was architects.
Right.
So architects were sharing the knowledge with the interior designers, where we felt that time there was a gap because they were looking at things from an architect's perspective.
Interior design is actually a relatively new field in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
I remember when I was taught with architecture in school, I was taught the fact that if your house is designed by a bad architect, only then would you need an interior designer. So that was rationale, right? Strangely, right?
Yeah.
So, and I realized that if I hold on, right, and I'm an architect, I realized that interior design is probably a lot more challenging, right? Then architecture involves a lot more materials, right? A lot more detailing, a lot more insight. And I grew to learn about that, and I was more fascinated about interior design, right? And that's going to start my own kind of firm with interior design with Lakshinie, right?
Yes.
Because I realized that, the strengths in interior design as to how I can transform.
So you think it was important then to have those two sets of skills together within your business?
Definitely, yes.
Absolutely. It's still growing, right?
Yes.
And so Sri Lanka, I think it's still relatively new. I feel. To put certain facts into perspective, right? I can start a company in Sri Lanka, right? That's recognized by the Architecture Institute. My partners can be either a quantity surveyor or engineers, and it can be recognized by the architecture faculty. But I can't start a firm, the interior designer, it won't be recognized by the architecture faculty because they're still not considered as parallels. Can you see? So there's how much still you got to grow in the industry, right? As to kind of how important interior design element is in the industry.
So we need to grow the professional recognition of the industry.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. I mean, at least I feel that probably at least the architectural faculty needs to understand the importance of the interior, right? Right?
Institute-wise, yes.
Absolutely,
yes.
Yeah. Right. Sometimes they might kind of say, hold on, architects can also do interior. Right? Yeah. And a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
But there's a whole new kind of language and theory, right? Design skills that involves in interior design.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, exactly. Right. Yeah. So that's something that I feel that this industry in Sri Lanka still is growing and needs to kind of understand the value of the interior designers in this country.
I think it's interesting that because we often are shown examples of architects, great architects who could do the interiors really well. You know, the classic architects often do every bit because they're so talented. And that doesn't necessarily carry through to every architect because they're not all trained, they're not all as experienced. And what we're seeing, certainly in the UK, is a much stronger interior design industry, educationally, as well as the British Institute of Interior Design and other bodies as well supporting the industry. So it's much more recognised. The interior design industry in Britain also has what you might call the interior decoration end, very popular. Lots of TV programs, more superficial, and an important part of the industry. But many people see interior design as being down towards that end of the spectrum, where in fact it's quite a very technical and involved and often architectural practice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're having the same debate here about
I would say it's still kind of scratching the surface. Right? I mean, again, I don't know how it works in the regulation in the UK. The regulation saying define that such and such a building should be designed by a chartered architect for so much qualification, etc. When it comes to design, there's no regulation or anything as such, right?
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing.
So anyone can do that. I think that's the same in the UK.
Right.
You can become an interior designer with no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I think probably still growing, and I would believe that there will be regulation that will be formulated saying, fine. Probably, hopefully, in 5 years from now or 10 years, let's hope that it would be a necessity to make sure that you appoint probably a good qualified designer. And let's not forget about houses, at least hotels.
Yes.
There's standards that you need to adhere to, right? So you can't just kind of upon any person kind of designing a hotel that kind of needs to confront certain requirements from developers and right? So
you've got health and safety. Do you have building regulations and all those kind of things that you need to be compliant?
Absolutely, yeah.
So now there is lack of knowledge in interior design when we are practicing because we don't have those regulations coming in.
Yes.
Now architects, they have a book, they know their building regulations, they know their things, but we don't have some sort of guidance, which is very, I would say, a big flaw, I would say, in the industry because there's nothing to follow, so anyone can do anything. So you can even go really wrong when you're doing interior architecture. Now NSBM is providing interior architecture courses, so that you're giving some people the the opportunity to turn buildings upside down, interior renovation. So there's a fair extent of civil work modification. But when you don't have guidelines, when you don't have rules and those contexts, it's very, very, I would say it's very challenging and very scary because I would ask someone like Thushar, okay, can we go to this extent? Is this something under the law, can we do this kind of thing, or is that practical? Or there's a huge grey area when I'm also practicing. Because a lot of houses now we are turning into very big modifications. So structurally, you should know you should know everything.
And it's an interesting subject that Lakshmi brings because I realize that's also there in schools. So when you say if I'm doing interior of a project, they try to kind of change the entire building. Right?
True.
Structurally, the roof, the flooring. Then I'm kind of question myself, hold on, you can't redesign a huge roof. Right, those are windows, right? I I mean, so here, I mean, you're playing the role of an architect, right? So you must understand exactly where the role of the interior architect should be, or to decorate or whatever. So, I mean, sometimes I feel maybe academically, you must probably give them some guidelines and define how much can you modify. Was it like 30%, 20% modification can be done?
Exactly.
You touch the roof and not touch the roof. I think those guidelines are important to a certain extent.
Very important.
Yeah, we have the same problem. Students are ambitious and want to create a concept, and they want to create a building.
Exactly.
And they choose a site, and it just arrives, and it's a terrible building because they're not experienced. And then they never get round to doing the interior because they're too busy creating the building.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I think that has to come from the institute or the university as a guideline.
Yeah.
Say Thushar is spot on. I always go for these interior design crates, and I'm actually commenting on architecture projects. And they have, as you said, they have not given thought to the material selection. They have not given thought to the furniture selection. They have not designed a single piece of furniture. This is interior design's elements.
Yes.
So, and then now they're doing, I mean, I went to AOD for a crate where they are encouraged to do logo design, merchandising. So it's a one whole package. So let's say it's a restaurant, the interior designer has to design the logo, the name, the brand for the restaurant, and the interior design and everything. So what I realized was there was no interior design in the project, but everything else is there.
Yes.
But they don't have simply the time to be focused and specialized in the core.
Yes, yeah.
So subject.
I think that's why I can see that happening in other courses in the UK, and I think it's important to understand brand and understand buildings and understand graphics and know what would work in the context of your project. But they're not graphic designers, they're not brand designers, they're not architects, and it's finding that core interior design element which is really key.
Yeah, and correct. And being expertise in something is very important.
Yeah.
Right now I see it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Jonathan says probably still new in the industry, globally.
Yeah.
Right now architecture is kind of clear cut.
Yeah.
What's expected.
Yes.
I didn't see architects going to the extent of doing interior design in any of my projects. I mean, as an academic, I don't see students. I mean, I do see students doing some proposing new furniture, etc. But they haven't missed out on the core aspect of what's required.
Yeah.
Right. So I believe that. I mean, architecture is such an old industry as well. I mean, so I guess it's streamlined and people know exactly how one to create the brief and what's being taught, what to teach, what not to teach. So yeah, I mean, so I believe so that's quite straightforward. I mean, in the architecture kind of.
I think in the UK the interiors design industry is, well, academically on those interior design courses, it's talking about adaptive reuse of buildings, where you take an existing building and change it. So it's those skills of how, where to put a hole to create a doorway or window. Some architectural work, but not rebuilding or creating new. Because it's not sustainable, is it? We've got so many old buildings in the UK and across the world. It's how do we train our students to be able to have the skills to adapt them sensitively and sustainably. Rather than just coming and create some fantastic sort of structure that they don't know how it's going to stand up, and it's got floors that thick, it's all out of scale, and there's too much glass, or they're sort of out of their depth. Tell me how you set up your business then. What was the point where you set up this studio?
So Lakshinie and I work in the same architecture firm, with the same passion for design, and I realized that it would be good to have, because I was also kind of intrigued with interior design as well, because I was more heavily to detailing when it comes to architecture. Previous firm also had interior designers, so I kind of was also overwhelmed with the interior design approach in architecture as well, and trying to see exactly where do you kind of draw the line where architecture starts or stops, and where does interior design come in. Right? It's very difficult to draw the line, but if you have two people kind of gelling, working together, things on a project, then you get the best out of the project.
Yeah, right? And working together to develop your ideas, and as a team, well, interior designers and architects working on the same thing.
Yes, so basically, correct, but in the current context, I have separate interior projects. They are falling to interior architecture category. Obviously, I will be having a chat with Thushar as well and get his insight as well. But his projects are architectural projects. Then the moment he's involved in the interior from inception, because as a studio we practice the same, so he understands the value of it.
Yeah.
So when his project is ready for the fine finishes for the interior fit out, we as a team join him. So then he kind of take over as a leading role for interior design. You're clear in what I'm saying,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's how we work currently at the moment.
At the same time, even for we'll start an architecture project. We are heavily into detailing, and again, interior design has already looked at the core, because we need to freeze on, architecture, you need to freeze on the floor finishes, the lighting, the AC, and I feel that I can hold up. I can't give it to my interior firm right now and say, hold on. You can manipulate the lighting the way you want to. Clients are not going to be happy with me eventually, right?
Yeah.
This has approached me for interior and architecture. So again, while we're designing the house, at least space-wise, looking at elements like AC location, conditioning, lighting, right? That's basic architectural elements, right? But designing that as well, we look into the interior. At least I will start looking at the interior, looking at the kind of basic concept of the interior.
Yeah.
You're going to have a center down like one side, or you're going to have just a small.
So you're thinking about the interior application
from the inception,
at the inception itself.
Yeah.
So I'm a very old school kind of guy, right? So we do a lot of sketches,
a
lot of perspective sketches, right? So our rooms also kind of starts with interior perspective sketches to see exactly where the bed lies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you can't, architecture, what happens is I realize that you just put the fan in the middle of the bed, the room, and then this girl took a fan and give it on to the interior design. Then she puts the bed somewhere else. It's not centered to the fan, right? And these are all issues that we all obviously AC somewhere else, right? The bed's here, the AC is there, right? And I hate that.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So this was like I'm more of a traditionalist, where I can start with the interior office space, know exactly when the bed's going to come, and that's the starting point, right? Then I know exactly where to place the fan. Then at least I know where to put the air conditioning, right? And the basic kind of concept for the lighting as well has to center the bed. Thereafter, right? There's the stuff which could be manipulated when you're doing the interior. You keep the floor lamp, the table lamp.
Yes, but this strategic use of space is defined with interior design in mind.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's very, very easy to work with Thushar's architectural projects when it comes to the idea. I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
Because everything is well thought of.
Yeah.
We are not going to change anything in the structure, or there's no issues in the servicing, because everything is well thought of. Even the core lighting, everything is there.
Yeah.
So it's a very fast track phase afterwards when we come to do the soft furnishing part of it, compared to any other architectural projects. Now we are being approached by other clients who have hired other architects on board.
Right.
So whereas in those projects we have lot more work.
Yes.
So we have to start doing a rewiring. We have to go to that extent, because I have to do the convincing part where, look, your bed is here, your plug points is in an eccentric position. This is not practical.
Yeah.
So we start all other projects. We start with the rewiring. We start with civil works modifications, all that. So where clients are losing more money when they hire us, because in that stage.
And I feel that it's probably a problem about when to point interior designer. So they always feel that I think probably globally as well. Once the project is done and let's say if I hold on the interior, decorator probably comes in at the end to resurrect space there. But I think there's a lot more to it rather than just decorating space. But I think, like you just mentioned, interior architecture is also critical.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So on most of the projects, like Lakshi says, is important because they come to us for interior architecture, not just interior decoration.
Yes.
Right?
So they're coming to you for the full service And how has that been received by potential clients? Do they see it as a new way of designing that combines both? Is there any resistance to that, or do they embrace that as an opportunity? Can they see the benefits of it?
So I feel that people kind of who have learned the lesson kind of do make sure that they kind of appoint the interior designer and the architect at the same time. I've realized only a few kind of that who have who are kind of built stuff. Right? I know I've done a few hotels and then I know a few kind of veteran developers kind of appoint the architect and the interior designer at the same time. Right? And a few of kind of ex-clients who worked with us for a long time kind of now approach us to do the architecture and the interior. Also, there are kind of new clients who have approached us, right, just to do the interior. Thankfully, they've actually kind of taken our advice and they've asked, when do we take you all on board? They told us in the beginning, right? So we have a lot of many clients who actually now pointed us right in the beginning, and I'm doing another project with Hot Place where we just put in foundations right now, and they're sharing the initial architectural drawings with us, and then they're giving us the scope to kind of change the idea, the main interior, and that's become a lot more useful. And I feel that that's helpful for the client, and I think that should be the way going forward as well. And I hope there's at least some forum that kind of educates people. Thinking from hold on, if you're trying to do your interior, make sure that they can appoint it early on.
I was wondering how you promote that concept of getting in early. I mean, it seems obvious, and everyone I speak to in the UK, whether they're a supplier, a designer, they want to get to the project as early as possible.
Exactly.
And generally, they never do. It's a common complaint, the acoustic person or the lighting person.
I think the awareness has to
and
be there.
50% of our clients are getting any kind of known to other clients, and they advise them, hold on, if you're taking an interior designer, talk to them, just make sure you take them on board. ASAP, right? Even though you're kind of laying house, bring them in right now. So actually, word of mouth, at least through our projects. Right? So what is it in our control? We try to kind of educate people, our clients.
And how do you go most of your work? Is it by word of mouth, or do you advertise, or do you...
Actually, strangely, never advertised. And not many people know us as well. Because we don't advertise so much, and we don't. I haven't not believed in kind of social media. Like Lakshinie always been telling me to make sure that we are on social media, on Instagram, right? So I realized not many students in this new generation, right, also know us because they want to awareness through Instagram, right? And the sales works like, wow, okay, fine, you've done some fantastic works, but you've not heard of your base, right? In a way, I'm all right with it. But again, actually, sometimes becomes difficult to make sure, because you get a good clientele, but how do you draw in good talent, right? In the industry, right? So the Lakshinie kind of is true in that sense, because sometimes you also need to be updated. Maybe if you be in social media, let's be in social media. But again, to answer your question, maybe that's advertising in today's context. Right? Instagram, Twitter, social media is probably the norm for advertising. So, not a heavy believer in it, but I think right now we are kind of going to be putting up a lot more content.
I think it's unavoidable, isn't it? I feel like designers of my generation and younger, like you guys, it's still like, what is this we're dealing with? We can see it's important, we can see all the kids are using it, but we can't quite work out whether it works as a business tool. We know it probably should, but we're not quite sure how to do it, And I think it's getting to grips with that. Maybe that is the way we'll advertise.
And also, for me, I have another side of it. Rather than just advertising, I want to show good work.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yeah.
We both are perfectionists. Sorry, that's how it is, right? We want to hit there. So that's why we are taking a little bit of time. More than advertising, I think the awareness to share something good with public is what we want. So we are patiently, we have unbelievable, amazing content. It will come in the right time. But at the moment, I'm not looking at social media as advertising, because all our clients, potential clients and all the things, as Thushar said, came from word of mouth and also have seen our works, or rather engineers to consultants have worked with us and suggested top design, which is a big impact.
And I've actually realized that there are a few clients who actually push through Instagram. A few projects that we've seen.
You've had some or not?
I have.
You have, yes.
And I just kind of was inquiring to find this is like out of the blue, where did it come from? Really, how do you get to know about us? Except if I saw a small post of yours on Facebook or Instagram, right? So, I don't know, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Amazing.
Right?
It works.
Yeah, exactly, right?
But that, you say...
But we don't want to solely focus on that.
Yeah, but John, I realize
that
the target clientele there probably doesn't look at necessarily at quality. You look at something on face value.
Yeah.
Alright, fine, can you get this amount for such price?
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, Twitter, TikTok does not show the professionalism.
Yeah.
It just shows something, a nice image. Right? And what is the amount of work that goes inside there? Right? I mean, that is not conveyed.
Yeah.
Right? So someone else, small young designer, probably could do something, but doesn't show the kind of, I mean, doesn't show the material, doesn't show the kind of timber that goes inside, doesn't show the quality of the laminates, right?
Yes.
So it's all face value, I think, to a certain extent. I mean, that's what Instagram.
You're relying on that composition of the image to capture attention.
And I realized that some of the clients that have approached us expect that for a very low fee. And I realized that maybe doesn't convey the right message, right? I mean, yes, it's got nice images, right? But is it hitting the right clientele that we want to?
Yeah. As
well as kind of thinking, right? So, yeah, so I mean, it's something that I was learning, right?
Yeah.
While if it's word of mouth, they know the amount of work we put in a project.
Yes.
They know our professionalism, right? They know that we might be a little bit expensive, that's so and so, but why is important to with us? So that's all conveyed through word of mouth, but not necessarily through Instagram, right? So, yeah, I mean, so I just feel, I mean, I realize that these are two little extremes that kind of...
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, exactly, yeah. So, and to convince client who's come to Instagram takes a whole lot more time. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can find then it's difficult to educate them, hold on, now it's important to make sure that you invest this kind of money on the interior, and eventually sometimes you kind of give it a hold on, was it worth the kind of effort?
Trying convincing that party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right?
They're not quite the right customer for you.
Absolutely,
So you mentioned being perfectionists. You're talking about materials. What else sort of defines you as a company that makes you different from everyone else?
We have an architecture interior design company, and 7 years ago, I started my own interior, fabrication company as well, a French company.
Yes.
And I did that because I realized no one could actually fabricate our furniture. Right? Because I was more heavy in detail and no one bothered about detailing here in Sri Lanka, right?
Yeah.
Right? So it was just kind of producing that, and no one's interested about detailing, right? So supply would not say why bother so much kind of grooves, people said, so they won't understand the value of detailing. So, to answer your question, what was different is that, so I have my own kind of company that does furniture fabrication as well, right? And then that kind of helps me as well because, I know that it's more lawn. So right now, a lot of our clients approach us to do the furniture fabrication as well. So it's a kind of turnkey project where we design the architecture, interior, and as well as the furniture. Yeah, so I think that would probably be with, that's what kind of sets us apart to any other firm, I believe, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And we also enjoy the process because
more
I go to the workshop every weekend, right? Try to make sure I perfect
Is that manufactured in Sri Lanka?
Yes, so that factory is based in Katana, Colombo.
Mm-hmm.
So
weekend I go to the factory, right? And then try to check the samples physically. I myself do the cutting, shopping, making it sometimes. And you're a furniture designer, profession that gives a lot of joy as well. So I started as an architect, then became interior designer, now furniture fabricator.
Nice.
Right? That was the biggest, right? Because my dad was also, my grandfather was a carpenter.
Yeah.
Right? And my dad had his workshop as well, shut down, and then all connected dots here, and then it's Toko, and they kind of made it bigger, right? and I kind of enjoying that a lot more,
Yeah.
right, than what I was initially trained for.
Yes,
And there's
yeah.
a lot more pleasure in creating this kind of detailed stuff, right?
And is there a philosophy of the way you create spaces, or what influences you when you go into a project? How do you generate the brief?
Okay, there are two questions to that. Right? One is how's the design process? The design process, like I said, is for us is
Going back to the drawing board.
yeah. Maybe I can answer the second question first, right? About the brief,
Yeah.
right? Again, we love to challenge our clients all the time, right? All the time we challenge our clients, right? I'm just going to give you an example of a new project we did post-COVID, right? A lot of challenges. Here's a client. I mean, during COVID season, a period we all used to working from home. That was how things worked out, right? And we all learned different ways to communicate ideas to our clients because we could meet them face to face. We could send hard copies. So we learned new ways of presenting our designs to clients and how to make sure there's nothing like meeting. I mean, every time we did a presentation was physically, right? We did a physical presentation for all our projects. So we try to make it more interactive. You can actually meet the client physically. How do you kind of portray the spaces to them? So, I mean, we just realized that we spend a lot more time in the presentation, and that became a lot more interactive. So we realized that becomes a lot more important. Right? So I mean that something that changed design approach during the COVID season.
Yeah.
So that's one thing about design approach, right? So we will spend a lot more time on technology, animations in the PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
Make sure how you can bring in the material at the right time.
Yeah.
People kind of are convinced, okay, hold on, why, and how do they kind of envisage the space there? So, and it's not like presenting on a hard copy.
Yeah.
So they are probably 1,000 miles away, right? And you're here. How do you make sure that kind of they walking through the entire space, right? Just by through computer. Now I also insist, don't sit in front of your laptop. Please make sure that you put the entire presentation on TV. Else I'm not presenting this.
Yes.
And I also insist that.
Yeah.
And 9% of the time it works because I can't present my design concept on a small piece of
Yes.
phone or laptop.
Yeah.
Right? So that's something that we insist on and actually work most of the time. Right?
Mm.
So I think that's something that we changed. Number two is about the design brief. So like I said, we always challenge our clients when it comes to design brief. Now again, there's a new interesting project that we did post-COVID. We approached by a client to do this interior space for them. It was, I think they were more computer program related company, data analytics. And this challenge was, Thushar, I need to get back my staff. And I realized this is probably an issue right now globally, right?
Yeah.
I read a small Twitter post from Elon Musk saying that if it doesn't turn up for work,
Considered left the
consider yourself left the company because he himself realized that it's difficult to get the staff back to working after school because everyone's got comfortable working at home. And sometimes it's essential to have this old core
face-to-face.
Yeah, I mean elements that we enjoy working in offices. I mean, it's collaboration, meeting face-to-face with clients, meeting with your colleagues over coffee, sharing ideas, brainstorming sessions. So I think we make sure that we hit a hybrid. Yes, working from home as well as working from office is important.
Yeah.
So this interest project was actually, and that will change us as well, right? Same thing. And he had a challenge saying, I need to bring back my staff, right, to workspace. And he got this kind of amazing office space in 26th floor at Prime Office Tower in Colombo, right? Beautiful view, right? His brief was simple, right? And what's interesting is that we sat down with him and we developed the brief. Said, hold on, okay, here we have people who have got used to working from home, right? And you need to draw them to your workspace, right? So you see exactly the work culture at home, right? I mean, what are they used to maybe making phone calls and maybe kind of having, sort of taking a quick tea break or a kind of coffee break, to watching some TV, right? So say what if you could bring in those kind of elements to a certain extent in your office atmosphere that don't feel alienated locally, right? So we developed the brief to a certain extent, change it to a certain extent, right? Yeah. And we said, we told him, fine, don't make it like a typical office space where a client would make sure that each and every square inch of this office space is built up by desks.
Yes.
And that will kill it, and don't want to come back to a space that big, like in most call centers, whatever. Right? So that's something that we convinced him. Right? So I think I told him that's open space is as much important as built space, right? So that's something that he was convinced with, right? So that changed the brief to a certain extent. We also created this interesting kind of hangout spaces, breakout spaces, right? So that's something that we introduced in the brief. We also introduced different work styles, work spaces. We had high bar work counting, spaces where the high bar counter could work and standing up, right?
So a variety in seating, which is also at the same time educating the client to come out from the stereotype, because when a client comes to us, they obviously have preconceived ideas. That is the time it's very difficult to break those preconceived ideas and convincing them, to keep convincing them and come up with the designer brief at the same time. So it's a reinterpretation of a client's brief, right? So that's where we stand.
That's something I taught at school as well.
Yeah.
Right? I never implemented it. I've been never implemented in most kind of firms. And I'm a strong believer of that, right? Because that's where you enjoy the whole procedure. If you just give you kind of, hold on, this is my brief, I need X number of tables, I need director's table, it becomes so boring, right? And
so you like to challenge them.
We challenge them and realize that unlike other firms, we spend a whole lot more time in the initial design session, right? Convincing them, hold on, change your brief. We also remember in that same project, we designed a small booth that they could go in and then start laying their own private calls as well. Right? So after that become a bit popular right now in that office space, right? Everyone kind of just goes there, kind of takes a quick call and comes out. So that's something that maybe in this situation became quite popular, right? I mean, John's basically, unlike other kind of firms, we spend a lot of time in the initial design session, challenging, interpreting the brief, and also in the initial presentation, I would say a lot of designers think that they have to do so much work in the initial presentations, like 9% of designs are done. So yes, we want to make sure because it's totally different to what they've asked for sometimes, right? And we, like Lakshinie, we try to be professionals. We want to make sure that we kind of convince 100%. This is why you all need to go with this. So that's why I think the initial design stage requires a lot more work convincing them.
Yes,
right?
Because you're trying to change their mindset. It's fascinating to think that across the whole world, we've all been tackling that same issue because we have the same thing in the UK of getting people back into work, creating the office as a social hub, how to encourage collaboration, interaction, and it's happening here, it's happening everywhere. That's quite. We've all been through some massive, great big experience, haven't we?
Absolutely.
So, I'm just interested in the things that are similar across the globe. What's different about Sri Lankan design culture? Are you influenced by the Sri Lankan culture or traditions, or are there any things that are different that are a result of your location? And one thing I'm certainly focused on is the climate. So it's pretty hot here, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, that's one element of how do you deal with the temperature. But are you influenced by Sri Lankan culture or Sri Lankan traditions in your design work, or do you see yourself influenced by more wider trends and other issues?
I mean, we're more international, right? And we like to follow kind of
contemporary
kind
of designs.
Cutting designers like, I would say like people like Albert Pushelberg from Toronto, Studio Mungi, right? Again from with Italian designer based in Canada again. We're kind of inspired by those kind of works. So we're a little bit more international when we come to our design approach. I would say it's kind of Sri Lankan style. That's known as kind of interpretation, at least of our interior design.
But still, I think we are quite sensitive within the context.
So there are a few clients. I would say that is an overwhelming deciding factor in our design approach. On certain projects, yes, we'd like to bring in a subtle amount of Sri Lankanness in a project. It all depends on the clients as well, right? Certain clients would like this kind of nice exotic kind of European kind of setup, right? And there are certain clients who overseas, right?
Overseas and who appreciate the Sri Lankan culture.
Let's say if I'm doing boutique hotel, they're doing an apartment, they want to come down here.
Yes.
They say if they like to bring a little bit of Sri Lankan touch.
Okay.
Right? Doesn't mean that we try to go back to the rattan or timber. No, right? So I'm heavily against that. We kind of have this kind of postmodern design ideology. We kind of take this typical Sri Lankan element, right, and hang it on your wall and make it kind of Sri Lankan. Right? So that's not us. Right? So probably what we would be doing is we'd probably be inspired by the rattan. I remember we did another interior project for an apartment, and she liked to bring in the kind of beachy vibe. Right? Sri Lanka, into an apartment. And having said that, she said she liked the colors and she said she liked the textures of rattan, but we didn't necessarily try to use those elements per se in the interior. We didn't try to use rattan, which is like one kind of fabric used in traditional Sri Lankan designs. We didn't try to use it kind of per se. We were inspired by it and we tried to recreate it, try to find a wallpaper that had a similar texture. Right?
So indirectly to give the same kind of feel, right? But in a more modern, contemporary context is what we are looking at. Because I think 20 years down the line, someone might just put a mask, like a traditional, Sri Lankan mask or another color of like a.
And we do have clients as well. So can I put in this kind of old chair that I have from my grandmother's place or whatever, and it's like just to make sure that it's right, it's Sri Lankan, and we say like no, don't do it. Right? So we can probably make it more Sri Lankan by another means.
But what we are trying to tell is like we are not saying no. We just want to make sure that we carefully use those elements in the interior or in the architecture. Architecture-wise, I think Thushar, definitely our projects, I think still we do have an influence where we tend to, in your projects mainly, it's very open because it's a tropical country. You carefully design the voids, double height spaces, and in the general areas the natural lighting and ventilation is coming. All those things are there in all our projects. If you're asking, are we influenced? I think still we have those roots. But in a more contemporary way, we use it. Is that right?
And also kind of just kind of another story in the same context. So here we're also doing another apartment interior for a client of us. So he's living in the house designed by Jeffrey, right? For years, right? Dad had built it, so they've been living there, and they sort of realized that if I typically maintain this house, let's move into an apartment, right? And he invited me over to his. We already did a presentation actually. We loved the presentation, right? And he said, let's proceed with the design as per se. And then he kind of invited me for coffee over to his house. Just have a look at the house. And then he asked, can he incorporate some of the elements in the existing house, right? Because he says that he likes to kind of take a little bit of spirit from the old house back into his apartment, right? And I was a bit, I don't know how I would take it, because here there was a very respected architect, right? Jeffrey Barber, right? And I didn't want to kind of, and his design style was more postmodernist, right? He used to kind of take the traditional elements and put it in the house, right? And yes, he must respect his architecture, but it does not mean that we still kind of do the same kind of design. So it was a challenge for me to see that what can I take from the house, right? So the client mentioned a few items that they can take this. And I said, fine, you tell me exactly what you like, right? And I will select exactly what will suit your house, what will not suit your house. And he was absolutely flexible with that idea, right? So there was this kind of nice lucky Cyrenaica, again a nice painting. So Lucky's kind of a popular artist during that time, right? So I selected a black and white painting from that. I remember then selecting a few Dutch chairs, right? Nice contemporary Dutch chairs, and I selected, let's take this. And the idea was that I can take this, probably whitewash through the chairs, reuse it with a new spirit. And again, with old paintings, black and white, I thought I could have a nice frameless mounting on space just to give it a little bit more contemporary touch. Right? So I kind of saw it in that way and selected a few elements, and he's quite happy with it. Right? So again, to ask the question, how to bring Sri Lankanness to a certain project. So it's a bit sensitive as well. But what I like to do is we like to kind of take in a little bit old element and also try to make it a little bit more contemporary to a certain extent. So it blends in with our style as well. Not the same old element that exists on its own, but you get certain kind of
transformation.
But by doing that, I think there is a value addition, and also you will appreciate that element in the current context, which we all want to do. I think that's the most important thing. Otherwise, you will do a modern interior and you put something like a Sri Lankan old painting or some sort of thing, just like Thushar said, with the same frame, then you might feel that piece is odd in that context.
Yes, I understand.
So that's where we come into.
What about when you're selecting materials? Are you thinking about, sustainability? How important is that in Sri Lanka? Where are you sourcing your materials from? Do you have things that you lean towards because you like to use them?
I mean, it's interesting to create a green construction right now because we have. It's more like an embargo right now, right?
Yes.
Right. We can't bring down materials, right? So, and that throws up a lot of challenges, and then I'll probably say it's sustainable it brings in the concept of sustainability, right? Where you don't bring in alien materials, right? From abroad, right? We try to use materials from locally. I mean, so we're going through that period, and I believe that should necessarily be a hard thing because Jeffrey Dahmer came out through that period in his 60s. Right? I mean, the restriction in bringing down materials, importing materials, and that's where you had the great genius of Jeffrey Dahmer evolving, right? By using local materials, right? We had designs like Silva coming in, Barbara Sansoni, right? Seneca. So we had these local talents coming up, right? Using local materials and making best of it. So I believe, and I think it's sustainable, not sustainable. So I believe we are going to the same phase right now. Just that the economy opened up, and then again going back to closed economy, right? We have to use our materials locally. It's a bit of a difficult pill for people to swallow, right? But I mean, I would say, not hitting ask your question about sustainability, I think, is that we're trying to use local materials because we have to use
We've got to do it,
right? So that's local timber, local teak.
Even the rugs, we try to go with the suppliers who do local weaving here right now.
And somebody can't bring down, like she mentioned, bring down fancy wallpapers. So here we kind of now hiring the local artists to do this kind of interesting
wall murals.
So
to a certain extent, the situation made us more sustainable than we used to.
And more creative.
More creative and very challenging also at the same time, because we are working with very minimal materials in general. Because I guess the industry and the country was heavily based on imports, which is the truth. I'm not lying about it, but it was the truth. But now, I guess to a certain extent, we are quite sustainable. Which is actually coming into practice right now because of this situation also, which is definitely a plus.
And then we do have very kind of limited range of material, but maybe most of it, unlike any other country like India, they have more timber, they have more marble, they have more granite. So the plethora of materials that they have. Sri Lanka, what do we produce? We don't produce anything. We don't have natural resources. Naturally we do have naturals, but we don't have granites, we don't have marbles, we don't produce brass, right? So we've got a limited range of materials, but yes, we're trying to make the most of it.
That's interesting. So what's the next step for you as a business then, do you think, moving forward? Have you got any aspirations or things you want to move into?
I feel that we'll probably be more heavily based on furniture production faculty. I mean, industry, right? And I realize that probably that will dictate a lot more of our design as well, right? Fortunately, I believe that's where the money is. I realize that running my firm right now, making a lot more money. I'm not talking business-wise, right? Through the furniture company more than the consultancy company. And I believe that's the way it is in the industry as well, right? I mean, a furniture production company will probably pay interior designer much more than a consultancy company. I'll probably be growing in that sector much more than consultancy. And so basically, that would probably be strong in our company.
Definitely, yes. And also the fact that we are coming out from COVID-19, now we are with this political instability in the country led to the economic crisis. So I think at this time what we are focusing is to, I don't know how it happens globally, but in the Sri Lankan context, we are trying to focus on the current projects and to sustain our employees and our projects right now. At the moment, we are
looking more at overseas clients right
yes,
now,
right now.
Yeah.
Because the situation is so volatile right now.
Yes.
So at the moment we are taking a bit of a safe.
Okay. Just to secure your future, just
absolutely.
Yeah. Slow and steady, I would
Yes.
say, and then probably when the situation gets better, obviously, just like Thushar said, we might explore the other areas where we think we could really, improve and share expertise.
When I come back next time, I can ask you that question again.
Of course. Yes.
We'll get an answer.
Yes, of course, definitely.
And I'm teaching at the interior design course. Have you got any advice for students who are going to be graduating this year? What would?
I would probably say the importance of training.
Yeah.
Right? The importance of training before you get out in the industry, start practicing. You need to work at a place at least for 2-3 years minimum.
Yeah.
And I think that should probably be inculcated from the
institutes
as well, I believe. Right? Make sure that you respect the place that you're going to work.
Yeah.
But they do understand the reasons of it, why you're going to undergo your training at the working space. I believe that should be inculcated in students a lot more. Because and I remember when I was training, I realized that I learned a lot more in my training session than at the architecture faculty. Right?
Yes.
And I never learned how to kind of get new jobs. I never learned about clients. I never learned how to talk to clients. And that's the most important thing about an industry.
I do totally agree with Thushar, because at the end of the day, professionalism, working ethics, everything has an impact in the industry, any industry. So, because we are designers, that doesn't mean we should not be accountable. We should be unprofessional. We can't do that. So there is this thing in the mindset. Okay, I'm a designer. I can do whatever you want. I can just come in and out whenever I want. No, actually not. They need to get more exposure for design trends. Yes. What's good design? That's something really lacking, I feel. If you compare, I'm coming from Academy of Design, where the international exposure was at peak, right? You need to follow good design overall the country. If I ask who's any student, I take on board, I have a complete interview, right? I ask questions, who's your favorite designer? Everyone coming from NSBM says it's Jeffrey Bauer. Right. Who's your favorite interior designer? The first thing they said, I like Jeffrey Bauer's work. But I will always say Jeffrey Bauer is not an interior designer.
Yes.
He was an architect long time ago. But who else? Who else? So I start the interviews right now saying, please don't say Jeffrey Bauer, tell me someone else. But simply we are practicing as architects and interior designers in the field. You're dealing with something very, complex and everything. So these qualities matters, in my opinion, because you have to be responsible and accountable for the building you're designing. Imagine it's something flaw in your design. You can't just say, sorry, I just did the intent drawing. That's it. That's my job. But no, not really. Just like how a doctor has to be responsible for his operation, we also need to be responsible in all the work we do. That's where the seriousness has to come.
I'd like to thank Thushar and Lakshinie for their time in talking to me, and also for the NSBM University for coordinating the visit. I was really impressed by their approach to integrate interior design and architecture into the design process to ensure that the design develops in a coherent and coordinated way, and also how they've managed to navigate the challenges of both COVID-19 and the economic crisis and develop a design aesthetic and design approach that deals with the challenges of getting materials and specifying in a creative and sustainable way. Slight apology for the delay in publishing this episode. It was recorded in 2022 and I've had a few challenges in terms of scheduling and priorities that have got in the way of what is a relatively simple exercise of recording and editing. But we've got it out now, so I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'd like to thank Dave Clark from I Am the How for production support and invaluable advice in the setting up of this podcast. Kay Hansen for her planning support and co-hosting for these and our educational podcasts for the University of Plymouth. And Mark Frith for composing the music. I'd like to hear your feedback on the podcast. Leave a comment on the website or get in touch via Instagram. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Thank you.